Hi, hello everybody. I'm just gonna get started right on the dot. Very German of me. So welcome to our Closer Look webinar series. It's something that we've been doing since the beginning of the year. It's a chance to, speak to our specialists. Sometimes we invite guests. Today, we will be focusing on our current auction, the big spring season auction of post-war and contemporary art. I have the lovely pleasure of heading that department with Artnet Auctions, and I have a great team with me. So let me just go around. Our senior specialist, Jason Rulnick.
Morning.
And our two specialists, CJ Greenhill Caldera and Henri Neuendorf.
Hello.
And last but very much not least, Solomon Bass.
Good morning.
And we will sort of share some, behind the scenes details today of how the sale came about and how specific lots came to us and the process of that. And we'll also look into some lots within the sale in detail. And leading speakers this morning will be CJ and Solomon. So I believe, Jason, did you want to do the website thing first, or should we? There we go. Okay.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Jason. I just wanted to chime in here and say that I'm so happy that CJ has joined us recently. I actually knew her years ago when I was a little intern at Phillips, and she was really running the Latin scene there, and we became friends, and then we stayed in touch and have found each other again here, and it's been really exciting and awesome to reconnect and delve into this great endeavor together.
I have to say it's really one of my highlights being here at Artnet, to be able to collaborate with the wonderful Solomon again. And I've always admired his frames for these incredible artworks. And so it's a real treat to be able to go through the sale today and discuss them with him. So as you can see up on the screen, we have our very exciting premiere sale, post-war and contemporary. Jason, if you could just give it a quick scroll through before we head into something very special that Artnet has done. In this new digital world of auction that we've seen quite the explosion with, we're presenting artworks in really innovative new ways so you can understand like the physicality of these fantastic works and helping them kind of reach beyond the screen, or in the case of Stella, feel that relief projecting beyond the picture plane. So Artnet has collaborated with Artari to create this really fantastic virtual presentation of Rozdal one of Stella's Polish village paintings. So here we are entering this exhibition, and you can see our lot right there in front. If we click on that little cube, not only will you understand the scale of it, it's over 9 feet tall, but here, when you press play on this little model, you'll also understand the materiality of it. It's a very special work coming out of this unique period in Stella's artistic trajectory where he really starts to engage with relief. And that's been like the springboard and what we know him now for. But as you shift the piece, you can see the felt, the way that kind of absorbs the light in contrast to those enamel paint areas that really shine and show this growth in Stella's work, reaching beyond the black paintings that gave him that landmark retrospective at MoMA at such a young age, at 33. This was in 1970. He spent a year after being hospitalized and receiving these books about the wooden synagogues, his investigation that really went into space. And here we see the sister work of Rozdal 1, Rozdal 2. These works were done in series, typically 4 iterations, and the projection just got greater and greater. And next to that, we also see some other great Polish villages. from MoMA and the National Gallery of Art. And Solomon and I got really excited with the pairing of the silhouettes in our sale, because Stella and Silhouette were in that MoMA circle at the same time.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. We have a large silhouette in this wall. Maybe Jason can show it next, but it's 55 inches tall by 60 wide. And even though it was executed, a bit in the artist's mature period in 2004, you really get the sense of kind of what was going on in that moment that CJ was talking about with regards to Stella in the 60s and even 70. Silhouette was actually a receptionist at MoMA in the early 60s. And so he was very much kind of hanging out with that whole circle, Judd, Stella, all those guys. And I think while, he didn't necessarily follow suit with their minimalist, formalist approach, he definitely, I think, took inspiration in how renegade those guys were. And, of course, before everything was so focused on abex and emotion and action. And these minimalists really wanted to do something new, like we see with the Stella work that we have. But Lewitt, I think, was totally interested in doing his own thing and really focusing, more so on the concept and basically breaking away from everything. Soon after that early period in early 60, he published in 67 in Art Forum the paragraphs on conceptual art. And he really spoke about the work of art itself as being really, to be honest, a perfunctory affair. Whereas, the concept, the idea was really what was driving him. And so I think, starting a whole movement basically around that was really, as a result of what he saw in terms of the innovation with the minimalists and everything that he was seeing, in the museum and all of that. Yeah, I mean, also, it's really interesting to have some kind of personal connections to some of these works. I remember going a few summers ago to Lewitt's studio in Chester, just being friendly with the curator of the estate. She kindly invited me up there, and you really got a sense, from not only the warehouse and seeing the range of his works, but also in the studio where he was working on gouaches, this sort of focus on the concept and the rigor conceptually. He had classical music recordings and, geometry, like you see with, this awesome Stella, was important for him too, Lewitt, but, in such a different way.
Absolutely, and these references and where they derive these unique geometries from. With Stella, we see this kind of evolution of his palette, but also these striking angles. And when we start to see his work become more architectural. If we go back to the virtual exhibition, there's a great timeline in there. And it shows how Stella evolved from kind of the shaped canvas and took it a step farther from his 1960s exhibition at Guggenheim and progressed to these Polish works. What Solomon and I were also talking about, how there's kind of these moments, these really crucial moments in each one of these artists' careers that are either, or that the catalyst is either a great curator, a fabulous gallerist who really is able to set the frame. For example, with the Stella pieces, we saw the evolution of his market when it came to works that were not just his latest reliefs, but really these works rooted in a deep history of a cultural heritage. And in this case, we see that with the Polish synagogues that were destroyed by the Nazis, and also the death of Russian constructivism. Stella himself spoke about this in an interview with Art Forum, about how the works both trace that devastation and that trajectory, but also celebrate and fill that void of what is lost. So and And so these kind of friendships with these curators at Whitney and beyond, and the fact that the series started out of a friendship with his good friend and architect Richard Meyer giving him the book. Solomon was telling me about Lewitt's most important friendship.
Yeah, it's interesting that CJ mentions also how curation and museums can illustrate the history and, these deeper relationships, and that can kind of eventually, but significantly, really seep into the market. And, in terms of Lewitt, as I'm sure many of you know, he was super good friends with Eva Hesse. And, particularly in the 1960s, they developed a really close rapport. Some of you maybe have seen the 1965 letter due that Saul wrote to Eva when she was doubting herself. She had a big creative block when she moved to Germany, and Saul responded by really poetically encouraging her to really just do her thing. And then sadly, in 1970, she passed. And Lewitt really took it as an opportunity to kind of pay homage to his friend. So he executed this very famous wall drawing 46, which really kind of embodies Eva's focus on organic form. Before, Lewitt was so fixated on the rigor of geometry and straightness and linearity. And, as you see in the MoMA collection with the cubic forms, and this work here as well. It really resembles a very geometric staircase, almost descending into some sort of transcendental sphere. But I think what he got from his friendship with Eva was something much more grounded, while it was still abstract, much more grounded in reality, in organic form. Eva had these photos, I think they were taken in '66 at Fischbach Gallery or something, where she was behind one of her works made of various rubber strands that intersected and came out of a sheet of metal. And really the resemblance to what Lewitt started doing after with the squiggly lines that either don't touch or intersect really strongly resembles what Eva was doing. And I think that, after her passing, he really kind of took on the emotions of what their friendship was about. And it was really well curated. In recent years, there was a 2014 exhibition at Blanton that then went to Cleveland in 2016 called Converging Lines. And it was totally all about that friendship that he had with her. You can really sense it in this work as well. Some of the squiggles don't touch, and it looks almost like some of Eva's forms that he's thrown onto a chromatic field. But this exhibition, that traveled, really illustrated deeply. Veronica Roberts was a part of it, Lucy Lippard, these famous critics. And, they really, I think, deepened the cultural and theoretical understanding of what the relationship was about and what it meant for Lewitt's work. And then you notice, that after that period, the market for Lewitt, and especially, works like the big gouache we have, really excelled. And I think, as CJ was mentioning, it has a lot to do with these curators and these museums who not only, put something up because they feel, it's important to show, what an artist was doing, but it's really kind of illustrating something deeper and something significant that shows the context for the artist. And that really has an impact in the market, as we see, which is interesting.
And also the conscience of collectors. Like, there's so many great works in these sales that have to do with this reimagining of reality and really changing the concepts with which we visually express our emotions and our emotional responses to pivotal moments in time. Like with the Mr. work, I was first introduced to Super Flat and Big Boy at the Japan Society in 2004. And from that, the art bug bit me. And I think we have a really exceptional Mr. work in our sale. And I think the Mr. market is another great story of friendship. And Solon and I were talking about how Takashi's hand can be seen in this market, and also how the curators really built it.
Yeah, yeah. No, totally second what CJ is saying completely. I mean, this work, while it's a small size, it's accessible, it's cute itself. It's like 10 by 14 inches. it really embodies all of this kind of conceptual focus and the focus on curation and what curation and historical relationships have done for artist markets. You know, Mr. CJ mentioned was a core pupil of Takashi Murakami, and his concept of the super flat and kawaii, which really emerged from the post-war period and kind of the reduction to flatness in society that necessitated a new genesis of culture, very much grounded in childhood and cuteness. That really, you know, seeped into the whole Kaikaikiki school, and Mr. in particular. You know, there was a very interesting exhibition. I wish I could have been in Paris to see it in 2019 at the Guimet Museum of National Asian Arts that Mr. curated with Pharrell. And, you know, Pharrell has been a big supporter of Mr. for a long time. And they executed this show together that, as CJ was mentioning, was very much representative of this sort of idealized floating world, you know, almost like a traditional ukiyo-e Edo period floating world that you could see actually at the time a few levels below in a traditional woodblock print exhibition. So it was probably interesting for those spectators to go from one room to another. But I think, you know, for someone like Mr. absorbing all of those concepts through Takashi and kind of having those opportunities to illustrate them in these very immersive installations has very much, you know, trickled down into the impact of what's happening with him financially. And, you know, in the galleries with Parotan, for example, you know, being a big supporter of his and getting him out there. I think, you know, everything is so related, you know, the curations and the histories and how it all happens. It's very in sync.
You guys, if I may jump in here for a second, well, one, I wanted to share, I forgot that earlier, that this, our big spring sale is the highest total volume sale that we've ever had. And Artnet Auctions has seen really great successes over the year of 2020. And even now in 2021, we've already broken our own records. So I am particularly proud of the sale. CJ's slot, the Frank Stella, I think is the highest estimate work that has come to the platform. So we're on a strong trajectory. And I wanted to kick it back over to you. And I feel that probably a lot of our listeners are curious about, you know, how we go about our business getting conversations with clients, how, you know, what is the process that leads to a stunning work like the Stella being up on our website?
Well, in general, this is a really exciting time in the market. You're seeing these jewels just surface. And it's because of like this new international gaze that we're taking to contemporary. But first and foremost, art is a very personal thing. And so are these relationships. And a jewel like this, sometimes it's hard to let go of, but the consigner of this work just knew that this is the time in the market for a Stella to really shine. And Stella, we're seeing with the results over the past few years and also the growth of a Polish village. Before the Whitney retrospective, a Polish village would be 100 to 250,000. Now, as of 2019, we're seeing that the works are fetching close to $1.5 million on the primary market. It's a very exciting time, and the consigner really understood this. I really enjoy working with him. One of my favorite things he's ever said is, for some of his Stellas, they will never ever leave his side. Even in like eternity, he has to figure out how to bring them with him to the afterlife. And that is the type of passion you want to see. And that's why this work is just immaculate. Like the surfaces are to die for because it's been loved. So it's really about picking this moment, and it's a moment for expansion. And that's why we're seeing shifts in focus. I was just speaking to a curator from Texas the other day. She works on a really fabulous collection. And it started as just like American modernism, and then shifted into American contemporary. And then with this reintegration of Latin and African and all these great regions into the traditional contemporary commercial canon. Her collection is actually looking at deaccessionating some of these works and acquiring works from more diverse voices. So I think that's this moment in the market where everyone's looking to expand their collection in these exciting ways and look at, for example, at women artists like Sue Williams. So I think it's just an exciting time.
Yeah, totally agree on that. I mean, it's an amazing time both to buy and to sell because really the best material is coming to light. And, you know, for the most part, if works are attractive and priced attractively and, you know, have strong markets behind the artists, things do very well. You know, in the case of someone like Mr. a few years ago, you know, we had a little work on paper that, you know, was more so below $5,000. Now, you know, for something that's at an auction house estimated at 20 to 30,000, you know, at a size similar to the one we have, it'll go for over 60 or over 80, you know, regularly in these years. So I think it just really demonstrates that when you present something that's grounded in what the artist is known for and, you know, the sort of conceptual rigor of what the artist is doing and the curation aspect, you can really have success. And I think it's really interesting. Part of the reason that our clients really are drawn to us and respect us is because of this deep expertise that we have and all the knowledge about how these various aspects of what the artists are doing feed into the financials. You know, it's not just an analytic about numbers. It's really, you know, we are able to sense and figure out based on what's going on, what's really going to happen and what'll trade and what'll trade well. So
Solomon, sorry to jump in here real quick, just because this is actually a lot that I sourced, the Abudia that Jason is showing on the screen. And it is exactly one of those examples. The, you know, clients are looking to diversify their collection. Abudia is an Ivorian artist, and you can see in the market that since the beginning of March, his prices have basically gone up 10 times, like by factor 10. So there suddenly is this huge jump in the market, and it's very difficult to get this material at the time. So we were able to sell a piece in our last sale at 144 premium. So this is a really good deal. And Jason, also because you were showing the Damien Hirst before, I think it's very important to notice that it is, I think, the second highest valued work in the sale and actually was bid up to the reserve, I don't know, in the first days of the sale, while usually we see those types of things happening more towards the end of the sale. So I think that's a great testament to the quality of our material and of course also to our audience. And CJ, if I may poke you a little more about your relationship with the client, because I think it is such a great story and you know, it sheds so much light on how, yeah, what it takes to really get a hold of such prime material.
Well, these relationships are also about trust and knowing each other for a long time, and also knowing each other's collections and collecting interests and the market. So I look at these relationships very much as a friendship as well. Like, we talk almost every day. Many people think a consignor relationship, you just talk during the on season. That is not true at all. It's really like this special relationship because you're working with the most personal and also the most beautiful things and really points of history. For this collector, he really loved Stella, and it was very important to him, the placement of this artwork and the frame that Artnet is lending to it, and realizing its true like importance not only at this particular moment in the market, but also historically as we're really changing our consciousness towards these artworks. So it's been a real pleasure to work with him in this moment. And these types, you typically, like when you're working with such a great collector, sometimes you gotta work up to a piece like this. It's hard to let go. I know if it was my Stella, I don't know if I could ever let it go, to be quite frank. It's just gorgeous. And it just has to do with like understanding where we are and being very honest about that. I think the beauty about the Artnet team is that we all have these special relationships with our collectors, that we understand what they have now and where they want to go, and also understand that in the context of the market, that we're going to not only honor the piece with our presentation and our expertise and placing it in the best possible hands, but also make sure that we're hitting that pitch perfect point in the market. So they're seeing the price that would also honor their piece.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think that's the beauty of Artnet. And also right now in this digital world, there is nothing more exciting than talking about a Stella with collectors that are not always been Stella collectors. Like at Artnet, I've had the privilege of talking to like these wonderful like Latin collectors and Italian collectors who are all of a sudden like expanding their own collections. So it's really an exciting time, and to be able to share this with the consigner, he's overjoyed that the artist that he loves and the work he believes so much in is just reaching all expanses of the global art world.
Yeah, CJ, I think you mentioned a very important thing, which is the deep nature of relationships with clients, friendships and conversations that go on over years, literally. And, you know, when I think for me, it's always a very special moment when you receive an invite to visit a collector's home and you see the breadth of their collection. And then, you know, it's something for us to keep in mind. And when the moment is exactly where it is right now for Frank Stella, it is, you know, the moment to poke the client and engage in this conversation. And yeah, job very well done here. Solomon, I think it's some more talking time for you now.
Yeah, no, I think just going back to the idea of our international reach and who we're talking to and where we're stretched, you know, with something like the Hearst, we're able to be, you know, so communicative about it because it does go back, you know, to this theme of representing everything that the artist is about. You know, it has all these references to mythology with the symbolic nature of the butterflies being about a life and death cycle, and you know, healing and even religious themes. And, you know, it's super, super representative of, you know, what the artist did with his early exhibitions too. And so, you know, we have people who are interested in it around the world, and we're able to use our intense channels. You know, we have a strong presence on WeChat, for example, and we're able, you know, to publish very in-depth features to really market and communicate about these works to a wide range. You know, we have an exceptional team who's able to translate any text for us into Chinese and, you know, speak on our behalf or connect us directly with collectors, you know, in Asia. And so it's really fascinating, you know, to have this experience and be able to be so international in how we're carrying these discussions. But I think, you know, at the end of the day, it really all goes back to what we're supported by, which is the strength of the material. And, you know, the fact that something, you know, like the Hearst is, you know, not only historically important, you know, in the situation of the artist's work, but also it's just aesthetically mind-bogglingly stunning. You know, the gloss, it's hard to really illustrate online the beauty of, you know, the shine and the yellow pigmentation. And it's really exceptional. And you can see from some of the detail shots, even in the banner we have for the sale, how spectacular it is, the way that the yellow paint, the yellow, it's really gloss, intersects with these luminescent wings of the butterflies that look, you know, as if they're basically still alive. They're, you know, stuck, so to speak, to the gloss. Hearst was inspired by how flies would fly into his canvases, and he kind of wanted to echo that on a more grand, visual scale, but yeah, you can see with this banner how the paint itself really overlaps, and the colors really are so kaleidoscopic and mystical, and that's what really carries these conversations with collectors, in places like Asia, or it's far away and there are time differences, but because of the strength of the material, we're really able to ground ourselves in spectacular discussions and ways for us to go in depth with people.
And the beauty of seeing these works online is that you can really zoom in.
Yeah.
You can understand like the scale of it, because we have all these great reference images in the case of the Stella, this extraordinary virtual environment. And then you can also really take in every detail with the high-res imagery that Artnet provides. And you can also like take this journey with one of our specialists by engaging them, because each one of these works has an extraordinary consigner and collector story. And I think it's just exciting to work with material that just jumps from the screen in every way.
Yeah, I know this concept of illustration online, it's really, I think, totally changed and improved over the past couple of years. We're able to really access the textures. I mean, this Poons, for example, it's just totally tactile and has a multitude of various hues, and you can really get the sense of an almost sculptural paint layer, that the artist is so treasured for. And, I'm sure some of you have seen images or videos of Poons painting, how he has everything stretched all around his studio and everything is so thrown around with the paint being everywhere. And you really get that sense of action and, emotional buildup on the surface. And I think our quality of images and, the way that the market is progressing towards being attached to high-res images and kind of evaluating based on that really, I think, is represented in something like this Poons or, the Hearst, or, really a lot of works that we have in the Stella also.
Well, I know that if I were in our audience, I'd be dying to ask some questions now because of all this like visual beauty. I would be jumping at the bit. So just so everyone knows, you can go ahead and enter any questions you may have into the chat. And it'd be our pleasure to speak a little bit more about these works. As you're putting your questions in, we'll give you a hot second here. Henry, would you like to share one of your favorite lots from the sale?
Yeah, sure. I mean, for me, my favorite one is probably the Sherry Levine. This is a very interesting work from her Stripe series. Sherry Levine, of course, is known for her appropriations, and as an appropriation artist in this case, she's not focusing on any specific art work or art movement, but rather focusing on a pattern. So she's appropriating this stripe pattern, which is, of course, something that we see throughout art history, especially in the abstract expressionist circles and in the color field. And rather than just going ahead and painting stripes, she's really focusing on the materials. So in this case, there's a big focus on natural materials. The work itself is painted on board, on a mahogany board, which contains and it's a paint of casein and wax, which of course are also both natural materials. And if you look closely, you can see that some of these, the materiality shines through. So it has this kind of velvety feel, and you can see the mahogany board through the paint, which is a very nice touch. And there's always certain imperfections in these paintings that make them really interesting. The lines are not perfectly straight. They're imperfect, so you can. It kind of has a little bit of a natural feel to it, and also the board itself isn't exactly straight and is not four-sided perfectly. So you do have this kind of rigidity of the lines, but on close inspection, it is a little bit unbalanced, and that's something that I really like about this work. Also, it comes from a really, really amazing collection. Yeah, the provenance is really A1 of this work. The condition is good. It's in great shape. for work that's coming from 1986. And also the price is really sensational. You know, we see these works trading on the primary market for around $300,000. And at this estimate, you can really score a fantastic bargain and, you know, own a really fantastic artwork. So yeah, that's what I would pick. If I was bidding, that would be my pick.
You brought up a great point about like the artist's hand, and actually it like ties in beautifully with a question from our audience. So condition. I know when we buy other wonderful things online, that's something that we think about, and I know it's something always top of mind with collectors. So this goes really back to what we were speaking about with trusted relationships. Like, we all have really close relationships with these collectors, and we've been afforded the enormous privilege, because it is an honor, of going to these collectors' homes, seeing these works, and also working with these incredible individuals who are really shaping our cultural heritage through their acquisition for years. So, for example, with the Stella work, I could not trust this consignor more, and I had the privilege of going literally over every inch over FaceTime and video. Usually in the pre-corona world, we got to see everything in person. We would go everywhere. But that's usually like, if I can't see it in person, you better believe I'm FaceTiming and getting videos of every inch. So I would love to hear like the methodology from other specialists on how you really shore up the condition. And of course, as we all have these different pockets of expertise, for example, when I look at Cuban works, which are some of my favorite in the world, I'm aware of certain shifts in condition that can be present from certain periods. So we have that kind of eye and knowledge of what to look for with these works as well. So Solomon, I would love to hear like how you do it.
Yeah, I think totally, you know, your point about being aware and having sort of the tool set to be able to evaluate on your own. You know, I'm always out looking at shows, you know, on nights and weekends, and going to museums all the time, and just trying to make sure, you know, I know about everything that's out there, and not only, you know, from a historical, cultural perspective, but also from a material perspective. So whenever I'm out, I make sure to look super closely, you know, at these various works that are important on the market, and try to get an extremely detailed understanding of what a work should look like, what some of the issues could be. And, you know, then, you know, often we do have the opportunity to kind of refine our skills by visiting things in person and kind of channeling that. So for example, with the de Kooning that's in our sale, I had the wonderful opportunity to inspect it in a storage in New York, and, you know, really kind of apply what, you know, I've learned, you know, from mentoring specialists in past years, and, you know, as we've examined things together in our storage in the Woolworth, and then just, you know, furthering that by looking also, you know, studying other condition reports. You know, there are a lot of condition reports out there and available, you know, that either other auction houses publish, or, you know, galleries. And so I think that's also been a huge part of my personal training, is to really look at what is written about, you know, for these artists in terms of condition, and kind of apply that into my own synthetical understanding of examining a specific work by the same artist. You know, it's really, I think, important to kind of be able to draw from a wide range of knowledge and skill and experience, and also visual understanding, because I think that's what really helps you, especially when you're looking specifically at images and communicating with a consignor. You want to be kind of having the backbone and the support of your kind of visual background and your visual understanding to be able to have that dialogue with, you know, someone who's already super vetted and trusted, and can bring their own inspecting skills, and then you engage in a sort of conversation and dialogue with that person, the consignor. So it's really.
I want to echo on that. Also, one thing that we haven't really mentioned at all here is COVID, the COVID state of the world. And a year ago, we would not be interested to go to your house for, and we offer a lot of things by JPEG. They're coming from trusted client relationships. We look at video, we look at TIFF files, we look at everything, many image requests. But this, what's changed in the last year is we've been going into more storages. We've been going to see more things. We've been welcome out into the world, getting back into it. And the kind of material that we're coming up with are things that are really just far more desirable. We have been putting together this kind of premier / marquee sale twice a year in the spring and in the fall. And as you know, the COVID world has changed the whole auction calendar, art fair calendar. There's even discussions that we should really do this more frequently. We have the sellers, and I think the good material brings the buyers to the market.
And it's this explosion of the mid-market for online. It's taken it to a new place. Collectors that I speak to love the fact that they can bid whenever, whatever time zone, and they can bid on truly museum-worthy material now online. And that's one of the beautiful things that Artnet lends in this evolving world. At Freeze, it was really fun to bump into collectors and dealer friends and hear how they kind of love this new mobility that has kind of been thrust forward by this unusual point in time with COVID and its different regulations, but we're coming back, the art world.
Yeah, and I think that totally ties into something that someone from the audience asked about strategic bidding and timing and the flexibility of online bidding. I think in order to best apply yourself when bidding with us, it's really flexible and easy because you can place actually a maximum bid whenever you want. And so you kind of have this idea going in about what you're willing to put in, and then that gets coordinated through our online systems with what else is going on. And so even if you're in a totally different time zone from New York, from where other people are bidding, you're kind of already in place to be able to be where you want to be. And that's really important. And we, of course, have an exceptional sale operations team, and those individuals are always willing to liaise and assist bidders in terms of, kind of applying themselves and their needs and their maximums. And so, it's a really collaborative team. We're all here to support, each other and our clients in the best possible way. And I think, yeah, Jason, maybe you want to chime in there.
Yeah, there's a question that came in about strategies for bidding in an online sale. There's really many. There's no one way. That the first way to win an auction is certainly to bid the most. Our auctions have a timed ending, and bids placed in the final 5 minutes will extend the time by 5 minutes to let any kind of responsive bid. So it's not, please don't go in with the idea that if you wait to the last 30 seconds, you'll get in and win it. You'll find yourself very disappointed. These bidding wars that happen at the end, there's no time limit on them either. I mean, we have had things extend a half hour or longer. And then also the reserve is, technically it can't be any greater than the low estimate. It's often below the low estimate. If you're shy about asking questions, put up a bid. We'll contact you. We'll see. We'll get to work on the shipping things. Get you an estimate and get you in the right position to go on and win the lot. We're working on behalf of everybody here. The consigners are motivated, and we want to make sure that your experience is great. So you can follow the lots. Actually, on every lot page, there is a little button where you can follow it. That will also give you an alert anytime that there's a bid placed by anyone else on the platform. And sometimes it's the sale starts. It's a 14-day sale. It runs over 2 weekends. There's a lot of traffic on the weekends. That's the most traffic time. The sale starts slow. A few things meet reserve here or there, and then they really build up momentum towards the end. But we're all of us are here and happy to assist.
Yeah, never hesitate to reach out to a specialist. We are always happy to hear from you. And I've found when I've worked with clients in the past, ask how much interest is on the lot. We're happy to guide you, talk to you. If you're hesitating, if it's your first time bidding on online auction, that's what we're here for. If you are thinking about a bunch of different works and what fits best, please, we're happy to discuss that with you. And also on your unique bidding strategy. Maybe you have something coming up around the close of the sale and you want to place the optimum max bid for you, just let us know.
One more comment on that max bid. The maximum bid is the maximum amount you're willing to go. It's kind of like an autopilot. Your bids will not be executed unless there's a competing bid. So if there's a lot that's below the reserve presently, and you enter a significant max bid, the lot will meet the reserve and then pause there, and it won't exceed your bid, your initial bid, until there's a competing bid. I hope that makes things clear.
Yeah, Jason's just pointing out something very important, that you could get these incredible works at a steal with the max bid, because sometimes it doesn't get up there. So you should.
Your max bid will prevent other people from taking that bid increment above you.
Absolutely.
It's basically a way to stay in the lead at every bid increment, and that's really one of the biggest advantages. Rather than saying, you're bidding 100 and you don't put a max bid, and then somebody else bids 110, then you will have to bid 120 to get ahead. Whereas if you put in the max bid of 120 and someone bids 110, your bid of 110 comes into place and you're ahead at 110.
I think if no one has any
I think, yeah, we're ready to conclude Sweden Short. Again, with any other questions, please feel free to reach out. And this has been a great pleasure. And we hope to see you at our next Closer Look webinar. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.